Cut my arm.
Okay. Oh. Can you describe to me what happened?
I dropped something sharp and it made a very large cut on my arm.
Okay.
And I'm bleeding a lot and it hurts and it needs to get closed.
Okay. So the first thing is definitely controlling the bleeding. So finding this spot, applying pressure, making sure that the patient's condition, they're in a comfortable spot, they're not going to be unsafe, and they're out of danger, out of gameplay. And then continue to add pressure, and also reapply more gauze, can elevate the forearm as well. And then once I check to see if the bleeding has stopped, has the bleeding stopped?
Yes.
Okay, good. Then I can start with cleaning up the area just around. And then using saline to further irrigate and debride the area.
Gauze or ketchup?
Ketchup.
Ketchup.
Where is it?
Good. And then continuing to move the dirt, debris away from the site of the wound.
Looks like I'm bleeding more.
Rebleeding. So then continuing to apply pressure at the side of the wound. Stopped. Oh my gosh. And thank you. Has the bleeding stopped again?
Yes.
Okay, good. Continuing around the area to take out the debris. Then continue to move away from the wound.
Because it's a little green.
Fucking genius. Okay. And then once I've got most of the exterior area, I can continue to debride inside the wound. And just slightly going over the area. Are you doing alright?
Yes.
Okay. And then, depending on the wound, deciding the closure method. If it looks like it can approximate well, we can do Steri-Strips.
Move
Okay.
around.
And then, yeah, making sure that the area is clean and dry. And then, yeah, checking to see if the wound is a clean cut and can approximate. And then if we're doing Steri-Strips. And then, so before applying Steri-Strips, getting the adherent. Is it okay if I put this on?
Yes.
Okay. And measuring to make sure that the Steri-Strips can cover above and below. Start by trying to approximate the skin. You doing okay?
Mm-hmm. You don't need to cover up the whole length.
Okay. First couple
Who are you
days.
talking to?
Oh, to Nick. So making sure that when you're taking care of the wound, that you're letting it dry. You don't need to peel off any of the Steri-Strips; those will fall off eventually. And then just coming in to check in periodically before any activity. but today try to keep it away from any other dirt or going outside, and keeping it covered until you get home and are able to either reapply a covering or just airing it out. Is that too tight?
No.
For the suture option, we're going to follow the same steps for wound care, but we're going to apply additional covering in the area to make sure everything is sanitized on the surface, as well as sanitized on the patient, making sure that the wound is dry, no longer bleeding, and no longer has any debris around or near the area. And as we're going to close up the area, we're going to want to make sure that the player is in a safe, contained environment where it is clean and out of the way from any other potential athletes or bystanders to come in. So first, the tools we're going to need are going to be angled or straight forceps. We're going to need a pair of tweezers and scissors. And so when we begin, we can open our chosen suture, and making sure that you have PPE prepared, you have proper biohazard bags. So our first step with the suture is to fully unravel it. And letting that lay out here. And so we're going to be using our angled forceps as our main needle holder, making sure to grab it at 3/4 of the way or anywhere past that, just to get a good hold on the needle itself, as well as making sure to use the tweezers as the hold for the skin, as well as to help pass the needle through. And so when we begin here, we're going to be starting with a simple interrupted suture. So starting at the very proximal of the wound, we're going to go into the skin, and we can use the forceps to help lift that, and we'll have it come out and bring it all the way through until there's about 3 to 5 centimeters left on the other side, the side that you started. And then we can go ahead and continue as we feed into the other way. And feed the whole thing through. And once we have passed completely, then we will be closing it off. You can grab your other pair of forceps, and we'll close it by going around 2 to 3 times and grabbing the end that you have left open. And after you grab that end, creating a knot. And so you're going to repeat it again in the opposite direction. Good. And grabbing the end again and finishing that knot. Good. And now you can cut off the excess that you have. And repeating.
And cutting that as well. And making sure that there's around 5 millimeters of the suture left. And repeating until the wound is closed.
Another option for injuries that are potentially longer and when you want to do a suture that is continuous throughout is called a simple running, which we'll demonstrate here. Same thing applies for this suture, is making sure that the patient is in a clean, contained environment and that everything has been properly disinfected and the patient is in a position that is comfortable. And so using the locking forceps to hold on to the needle, we will start at the proximal end of an injury. And after we begin with a simple interrupted, we can continue by creating a diagonal insertion right at the beginning point of our first suture and moving diagonally. And the goal of this is actually to create parallel, uninterrupted sutures at the finish. So we're passing under the skin diagonally, but then we are re-entering the wound parallel to where we came out. And repeating this through the whole length.
And for the last suture in the simple running, you're going to want to finish with one last suture, but not pulling it all the way tight, keeping a little bit of a loop left. And you're going to be using this as your block. And that will create a bit of a triangular knot. But will work just fine.